This episode is sponsored by Day by Day Book, a guided journal that helps you navigate the ups and downs of change while creating a life you love. For more information on the classic, recovery, or teen daybook, go to livedaybyday.com.
When I look at things that have changed and things that have not changed, things that have not changed are significantly involving parent well-being. When your child is diagnosed, you're given a to-do list a mile long. It only gets longer. It never gets shorter of all the things you have to do for your kid. But they don't talk about, hey, you as the parent need to regulate your nervous system. You're in this for the long haul. Here's how you do that. Here's how you heal yourself so that you can keep going. Because if you don't, you can't keep going.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. There are no words to describe a mother's love for her children and the lengths she will go to in order to ensure their health and happiness. Sara Intonato's son was diagnosed with autism at age 2, and from day one, she has been in lockstep with him, disproving the perceived limitations imposed by others by living their own truth. Her disciplined self-care has allowed her to boldly and successfully advocate for him even when experts told her it was impossible. Sara is now a master coach who teaches parents of children on the spectrum the skills they need to heal themselves, lead with confidence, and live a joyful life simply by showing up and taking action every day. By gaining the confidence needed to do so, these parents stop being the victims of a broken system wrought with stereotypes and instead succeed in providing their unique children with exactly what they need to thrive and share their own gifts with the world. One by one, these families now change the world through autism instead of being victimized by it. With over 20 years of coaching experience and an extensive background in yoga instruction and the ancient science of yoga, Sara is committed to her own growth and evolution, which she then brings back to her work. She lives with her husband, Ben, and 2 beautiful children, Rocco and Ray, in Montauk, New York. She and her family are the subject of Rocco Up, a 22-minute documentary film that's currently the buzz of film festivals around the world. In 2023, Sara published her best-selling book, Emotional Healing for Parents of Children with Autism, a journey you never expected to take, which is a spiritual guidebook for parents of children with autism and other neurodiversities. Sara, it is wonderful to have you with us today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here with you.
So Sara, typically I ask people to kind of give us a little bit of a background. So maybe you can tell us kind of where you grew up and then we can kind of go from there.
I grew up in Watertown, Massachusetts, right outside of the Boston area, and I had a very typical childhood. I have a younger sister. My father is a policeman. My mother is a nurse. So it was a very kind of by the book life. You know, I was encouraged to do well in school. My mom came from a family of immigrants. So we were really imparted with the idea of go make something of yourself. And I think I took that, as many people take it, very far and really prided myself on all the external accomplishments I was able to achieve in my life and veered more into the type A way of doing things for quite some time. And even as a kid, I was like that. And then I had a child who has become my greatest teacher in unlearning all of those tendencies that ultimately were not serving my true self. So it's really fascinating how I think you get what you're supposed to get on a parenting journey. You don't always get what you expect, and you don't always get what you plan for or want. But in my experience, I got exactly what I was supposed to get.
Oh, I love that. I love that perspective on it because, well, first of all, let's talk a little bit about your journey with Rocco. I know you say he was diagnosed at 2 years old.
Yep.
So, for all intents and purposes, you had a healthy baby and thought everything was going as planned. So, how did that all sort of transpire and take shape?
I was also the person who was going to do pregnancy and motherhood right. I was that person. And thank God by then I had yoga tempering me a bit. But I sought out natural childbirth. I gave birth with a midwife at home with both my children. I made their own baby food. I nursed. I'm not a halfway person. And I think that's probably why I felt called to have two children instead of six. I love children, but I'm the type of person that I want to pour everything I have into whatever it is I'm doing. And it was going along swimmingly for the first year of life. And then around maybe the 15-month-old mark, I started noticing that Rocco had some words, but they weren't expanding. His vocabulary was not increasing as quickly as friends' children who were the same age. And my father-in-law said to me at one point, have you checked his hearing? Is his hearing okay? And I said, I have. His hearing is fine. Why do you ask? And he said, because I wonder if he's hearing us. When we talk to him, he doesn't always seem to pay attention. And that was my first clue that, well, his hearing is checked out fine. So that's not the problem, but something else might be happening here. So it was around that time I started speaking to some friends who had children and also worked as speech therapists and in other capacities to get some advice. And they encouraged me just to go to my county, start filling out paperwork for early intervention to come and evaluate him, basically. And I was very nervous about that. But a friend of mine really lovingly said, all that stuff takes so much time and paperwork and energy. By the time you do it, he might be talking already. And by the time that evaluation comes around, maybe they'll just say, you're fine. He doesn't need anything, in which case you go to sleep at night and all is well. But in the event he does need something, why not get a leg up? Because it can take a long time. So I am so thankful for her advice to do that, because I think in many instances, parents wait and watch. And then when they realize there is something that needs to be addressed, there's more waiting on the other side of that to get services going, to get supports going, because the need is so great now. So it was literally like an overnight change, it felt like, because I went from being, in my mind, a regular parent to a regular toddler and a new baby. And then all of a sudden, my whole world was different. I had a list of things I needed to do every day to help him, therapies to enroll in, biomedical stuff to look into if I wanted, and I did. And so it really quickly felt like my world came crashing down. The life that I thought I was going to have, being a parent to babies and toddlers, looked very different, and I didn't have any role models for that at that time. And that's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, because I am a reader, and I immediately went to the bookstore to find the guidebook for parents to help them get through a really stressful time. And it didn't exist. And I was so shocked that it didn't exist. There were a million books to teach you about your kid's gut health and what types of therapies can support your kid. And there was nothing for parents. And it shocked me. And then 10 years later, there was still nothing for parents. When I was doing market research for my book proposal, I remember thinking, how can this be? And so I just said, all right, it's up to me to write the thing. And of course, now I know it's probably because most parents are so overwhelmed. They've got no time and energy to go write books. They're in it. I'm really thankful that I had the wherewithal to write the book that I wish I had when my child was newly diagnosed and I felt very lonely. There was no TikTok at that time. It was not cool to have autism. I will also add that Rocco's variation of autism is classified as non-speaking. The previous word was nonverbal. Non-speaking is a more current word. He does speak, but it's very limited in his ability. And I think that is a whole other world of people who feel isolated even within the autism world, because their kids are not like the people on Love on the Spectrum TV show. They're not going to job interviews so easily. And that can feel like a real slap in the face to families as well. Like even the autism inclusive spaces don't include a kid like mine. I mean, I'm happy to say that Rocco's in a great place. We are thriving as a family. He's thriving as a teenager. He's in high school now. He's the only non-speaker in a school of over 950 kids. Loves life. He's on the bowling team. He goes to the weight room with the other athletes, goes to school dances, like loves life. And it took us an enormous amount of work to get to this place of thriving. And it took us an enormous amount of work to get ourselves as parents to thrive enough to be the leaders of this process, because something that felt like another slap in the face when I was a young mom experiencing this in the beginning stages was that there's no leader for you. You have to be the leader and the case manager and mom and all these different hats that typical parents don't have to be. And the people you look to for guidance oftentimes don't have a lot of answers for you. So I'm deeply grateful that I had self-care under my belt at that time, because that's really the thing that kept me going. And I did not think I was doing anything special by getting on my yoga mat. I did not anticipate it being the difference maker for my child, but it was.
You say a couple of things that, I mean, and we're going to talk about your documentary in a minute, but that was really eye-opening to me to watch, having a sister who, I mean, I have a niece who is on the spectrum as well, and having been a part of that world and understanding it from a sister's point of view, right? I'm not obviously living it like she is, but you and your husband said it really eloquently, that you're expecting something and then you have something else, and you need to sort of, you have to play a different role and you have to step into this different role. But stepping into a different role as a parent is highly intense. I mean, regardless of what you can have a child that has no diagnosis and it can be highly intense as well. But doing that and playing that role, you hit the nail on the head. It's like you have to lead that process. And it sounds like you were trying to navigate something where we take for granted that out there's probably tons of people writing books about this. Come on. I mean, this is like really prevalent right now, which I would venture to say, I mean, my niece is almost 20. Rocco's 14, right? 14 now? 15.
Yeah.
So even 15 years ago, like,
Yeah.
I'm sure between then and now, things have changed to some degree, but probably not as much as we would think. I'm just curious and this is more just because I don't want to forget to ask this, but in your research and as you were delving into this, have children with autism, has that increased exponentially?
Yes.
I didn't know if it was more like they're being diagnosed better now. And so I don't know.
That's always part of what people will say when they look at the drastic, and I will use the word drastic, increase in autism rates. So in 2012, when Rocco was diagnosed, it was 1 in 88 kids. Now, 2025, it's 1 in 34, 1 in 22 in California.
Wow. Okay.
So that's a significant rise. So is it that we are just diagnosing better? Because I, in my head, can't fathom that that's the only factor that makes rates of autism increase that exponentially.
Right.
It seems excessive.
That does.
So to me, I think while you look at numbers like that and you think, well, things must be so different now. This population is so enormous. I think there's more conversation around it now. And for that, I'm very grateful. And parents are just as overwhelmed now, maybe more, as they were in 2012 when Rocco was diagnosed. And I say maybe more because at that time, there weren't many social media accounts to follow that profile families like mine. All that really existed online were sort of support chat rooms type of a thing, or Facebook groups. And I opted out of a lot of those because they felt very heavy. There was no real role model or leader to say, hey, I'm thriving. Let's do this together. It was more like commiserating. And you've heard the phrase misery loves company. I always change it a little and say misery loves miserable company. And that's what I felt like was happening. Because think about it. If you're miserable, you don't want to be around somebody who's crushing life and winning it. You want to be with someone who vibes at your level, and it takes the sting out of it a little bit, but it's also not helpful. So I opted out of the online space for many, many years. and just put my head down. I was Sarah, the yoga teacher, Sarah, the mom, and lived my life and was just focused only on my kid thriving. And in some ways, it was isolating, but in other ways, it was very intentionally done because I knew I couldn't get pulled into the heaviness. So I think while now I'm really thankful, there are more positive spaces for parents to go that are empowering, that are giving them better tools and supports. That in and of itself can be overwhelming because parents in an intense spot will go on social media and they're going to see a million and one things. If you have a non-speaking child like Rocco, you're going to be asking the question that all my clients ask. What do I do first? Should I focus on the gut health? Should I focus on the biomedical stuff? Should I get my house checked for mold? Should I focus on spelling? But school's not doing that. So do I have to focus on that at home? How do I find someone to help me? There are a million things. And while it's amazing that parents have options, the tricky thing about autism is that different things work for different people. So there's no clear protocol. It's not like getting an infection and someone gives you penicillin and then you're done. You're going to have to experiment a lot. And the experimentation takes time, energy, and resources. And families have to find the right mix for them. So I think the better conversations, more moms raising their hand and saying, this is what I'm doing, more dads coming out and showing what it's like to be a dad with a child like Rocco is really important. So the role model thing is shifting, and that's great. But I've got a focus group happening right now as I'm conducting some research for future projects. And I've got 20 people in there. And the amount of overwhelm and confusion of like, what do I do first? There's a million things. When does it end? How do I know if I'm doing it right? Still exists. It's pervasive. So it's amazing to see that as I started working with this group, we're only a few weeks in to our time together. The first few weeks, all I did was give them mindfulness practices for them. And they're changing so dramatically, and how they're interacting with their children is changing so dramatically. And I think that in and of itself is something that when I look at things that have changed and things that have not changed, things that have not changed are significantly involving parent well-being. When your child is diagnosed, you're given a to-do list a mile long, and it only gets longer. It never gets shorter of all the things you have to do for your kid. Someone might throw in a comment around like, oh yeah, don't forget to take a date night once in a while if you're married or have a partner. But they don't talk about, hey, you as the parent need to regulate your nervous system. You're in this for the long haul. Here's how you do that. Here's how you heal yourself so that you can keep going. Because if you don't, you can't keep going. And that's something that I sound like a one-trick pony with, but this is my work. This is why I specialize in working with parents in this way, because it's the only way some of these systemic issues are going to change.
You bring up such a good point, which everybody talks about self-care out there, that is out and about, and everybody talks about and I think it holds so true, especially when you are immersed. And I mean, I say this once again from a sister's point of view, knowing that I've seen this happen. Immersed, which is, I mean, rightfully so, right? You're doing right by your child, but you're also, you have to not neglect the fact that if you don't have that energy, you're not going to be good for anybody. And the fact that you started, and also having the yoga background that you have, that's so wonderful that you already had that tool. It was just like your go-to, right? I mean, how lucky to have that kind of just being able to get into a space and be able to sit with yourself. A lot of people can't do that. Also, I think you mentioned this, but it's also when you said just the deregulation of your nervous system and being able to regulate yourself.
Yeah.
There's a lot of sensory things happening as well with children with autism where you got to be on and you got, and there's a lot of loops happening and there's just things that can really ratchet up your nervous system super quickly. So I can only imagine working with parents. It's kind of like, where do we start? How do we get away from, there's the protocol for the child, of course, but then what's the protocol for you?
Well, that's the thing. And sometimes when you try to sell a parent on it's time for you to do a protocol for you, their knee jerk reaction is, but I can't because I have more to do for my kid. So when that happens, because parents are at this point ingrained with being hypervigilant, it's part of their identity at this level, it's part of their habit routine. It feels very uncomfortable to stop being hypervigilant if your subconscious identifies as this is normal and it identifies familiar as safe. So when you tell a parent to take a hard left turn, now you're going to do a protocol for you, and that is not their normal, and their subconscious has clung to this identity of being a hypervigilant person, it feels unsafe in their body to do that. But the only way you break through that feeling of unsafe energy is to regulate your nervous system. So you have to. So what I always do is I show parents a diagram about co-regulation because I say, you want to help your kid. You're telling me this is the most important thing in your life, right? And they're like, yes, absolutely. It's so simple. If you look at how co-regulation works, seeing your child when they're having a meltdown or they're experiencing sensory overload or they're having a behavior, self-injurious or aggressive behavior, and you want to intervene to help them, as any parent would do, the best thing and most important thing that you can do is regulate yourself first and go into that situation fully regulated, because co-regulation is actually impossible if a dysregulated adult goes to a dysregulated child. It becomes like the chicken or the egg issue. They both keep escalating each other. Parent tries to step in, but their energy is dysregulated, so it dysregulates the kid more. Then they escalate, that escalates the parent more, and they just keep escalating and escalating, and it becomes like eventually an explosion, and nobody knows why they even escalated to begin with because they're so ratcheted up, as you said. When you, the parent, regulate yourself, you become like the lighthouse in a storm. You go to your child and you are just this solid presence that allows their energy to come down and match it. And think of a lighthouse in a storm. It just stays in one spot and shines its light. And the boats see it and they come in. The lighthouse does not run up and down the beach waving to people frantically saying, you got me now, or what else? Or like, I'm really worried about you out there. No, it just stays there. And when parents see that co-regulation diagram and they realize, oh, there's actual science behind this, I am doing the opposite of helping my child. I'm hindering them when I try to intervene before I'm ready. It helps them to realize, okay, this feels uncomfortable, but now I understand that I have to do it. And they do. So that's when you start to see things really change fast. And it's really powerful and exciting. It's so gratifying in my work to see it over and over again. And it gives me the same feeling that I feel when I do my own yoga practice. I've been practicing yoga 6 days a week for over 20 years. And I love doing my yoga practice on days when it feels great. You know, when you have tons of energy and you're bendy and strong and the room's the perfect temperature and it's amazing. But I really love when I wake up in the morning and I'm not in the mood and I'm tired and I'm distracted and I go to my mat anyway and I just pour myself into it as best I can. And on the other side, every single time without fail, I'm like, wow, this stuff really works. I feel like a different person. But this is how parents feel when they start to regulate themselves and then interact with their child. They realize, oh, wow, this stuff really works. It's not just that hokey saying, you know, put your own oxygen mask on and then go help other people that's so overused now. They feel in their body that it's real. They see the change in the dynamic in their house. They see that it's real. And that to me is as exciting on the millionth time I see it as it was on the first time, seeing families really start to embody that because they're changing the energy in their child. They're changing the energy in their home. for everyone else who's there. They are more confident, so they approach interactions in social situations differently or with school differently because they are different. This is the special sauce that really creates powerful change across the board. It starts with the parents.
I love that too. And I was thinking, like, as you were saying this, have you done yoga for any of your clients? Like, had yoga practice with them? Because I can only imagine, and especially people that have never done yoga before, right? Because I feel like yoga for me, when I was I mean, have been in recovery for many years, but yoga for me was the place to go to feel like I was in my body again, right? It's like you're just kind of in another place intentionally for many years, and then you come back in and that feeling of actually understanding what's happening internally, that's huge right there,
It
right?
is.
Of just understanding this is an emotion that's happening for me. And I can imagine when you're reacting so much, that ability to do that is huge to help people. Huge.
It's one of those things that just, it never gets old.
Yes.
It never gets old. And you realize, well, this is why yoga's been around for thousands of years because it works.
So you have worked with a lot of different parents. Have you had different programs that you specialize in with them, or is it more just like, okay, let's set this the tone of what we're going to do here, and everybody's kind of has their own, I don't know, a system that you help them, because I know that step by step it helps people to give them some kind of guidelines. Is that kind of how you work, or is it more one-on-one coaching, so it's sort of wherever, kind of meeting them where they are?
Up to this point, I've done predominantly one-on-one coaching, and
Okay.
I love doing that. I love having deep relationships with people and really helping them profoundly. But I've also seen that in order to help more people, I have to get people in a group, and that also really serves them because it removes the lonely and isolation feelings. So I have taken a more customized approach previously, and I still do take one-on-one clients when they're the right clients. But I am now switching over to a more group-based format that is more, I'll say, systematized. And the group itself right now, and I imagine it will stay this way for a while, is focused on parents of non-speakers.
Got it.
That's not to say that other people don't benefit from that work. They do. But this is a group of people who have been marginalized, who have been ignored, who had nowhere to go, even in autism based schools a lot of the time. And getting them together and showing them that you are not alone. There are people who understand your life. We're all here to help each other. That in and of itself has been life changing for these people. But I do still support families in a one on one fashion when their child has verbal ability, but has different challenges on the spectrum. And I've really loved working with families one on one because things can be so vastly different from one to the next that a customized approach does serve them tremendously well. One thing that I will say that seems to be universal, I will say 90% of the parents who I coach in any format, group or one on one, regardless of how their children present with their autistic traits, 90% of them come to me saying, I need your help. I need to help my kid. And we do help their kid.
Right.
But as soon as they're in the door, it's like, oh, by the way, I'm noticing some things you need to clean up on your side of the street. So let's take care of that. And that always has an incredibly profound result. Some of my favorite clients have been grandparents. I love them. They've come to me and said they've often had an active caregiving role for their grandchild with autism. And they see it through a different lens because they're a caregiver, but they go home to their own home at night, or something like that. And it's been wild to show them, hey, all you can really do here, besides being grandma in loving ways that are healthy for you, is go clean up your side of the street. If you want to do that, you'll see a powerful result. And guess what happens? As they do that, their children are more empowered because they're not in a codependent cycle with grandparents. And as the children who are parents to the kids with autism are more empowered, they support their children more profoundly. So it's been really fascinating and also I think amazing. It goes back to, I think, one of the core principles of coaching clean up your own side of the street, regardless of the situation that you're in.
Yes.
It will drastically change your life, whether you're in recovery, whether you're parenting a child with autism. You can try to spend your energy cleaning up everyone else's side of the street, but it's not that effective. Just clean up yours.
Well, and what you said earlier on, which I love, which was your son was such a gift. When you think about when things are brought into our lives that we do not expect, they're meant to show us who we are, right? Like in 3D, right? So it's like if you're hold on, because you're going to go for a ride here. It's not just about this. It's also about what's brought you to this place as a human being. And I think that's the part that's so powerful. I can imagine working with grandparents, especially. I mean, just knowing my parents and how they would love, gosh, what can I do? How can I help? That type of thing. And it all kind of goes back to taking that look inward, which luckily when you have people that are willing to do that, you can just see immense changes that are just remarkable in everybody in the family, right?
It has been amazing to watch whole families, 3 different generations change because one person in the family stepped up and said, I'm going to clean up my own side of the street.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing is they're worried when they start. This is going to affect other people, especially if you have codependent dynamics in families, even with parents and children. You know, people often think about those taking place in romantic relationships, but they're present in parents and children as well, deeply so. And, you know, it's so amazing as you untangle that to see whole families change, to see every generation become more confident and more supported. And it's just beautiful. And, you know, as I was working with a family last year, it was so clear to me that the daughter, who was a mom of a non-speaker, just was not confident in herself. She was afraid. She'd been through a lot with her child and had not been served and supported by school systems, people who should be helping them. And that's traumatic when that happens. My family has been through that as well. And so you could just see that this amazing mom giving her best every day is clearly in fight or flight mode. And then grandma's coming in and grandma's the fixer and the doer. And of course, I'm looking at this dynamic thinking like, it's so amazing that this grandmother is so caring and so involved. And imagine what this daughter probably feels every day thinking like, I'll never do it as well as my mom will do it. Right. And so how amazing that as grandma said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to clean up my side of the street. The daughter gets to rise to the occasion and see how confident and capable she is, instead of it being in this dynamic of learned helplessness.
Yes, the learned helplessness. I love that. Because it's so true. It's like so subconscious.
Yeah.
And yet it's so prevalent. We've all been there in different times of our lives. So yes.
And I have to call out very quickly, because I don't want to forget, that learned helplessness is pervasive amongst parents of children with autism, because experts, I'll use air quotes around the word experts, have told them, you're just mom, you're just dad, you don't really know what you're doing. I'm the expert here.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're told something to the effect of, oh, that's just how autism is, and I can't really help you. I have a client right now who has spent an immense amount of time and money seeing a developmental pediatrician. And every time she goes, she waits months for her appointments. Every time she goes and talks about her daughter's sleep issues or her daughter's behaviors or anything that she wants to address, this is a mom doing her best, wanting to help her kid.
Mm-hmm.
This specialist says to her, oh, that's just autism. She's asked this doctor about medical marijuana. She's asked this doctor about supplements. And the doctor kind of throws her hands up and says, that's just autism, and doesn't have anything for her. So you tell me how helpless you would feel if you're a parent thinking, I'm doing my due diligence. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to experts who are supposed to be able to help me. And they're telling me that there's nothing here for me.
When you think about the regular medical system and how people are starting to wisen up to that of like, you know what, doctors don't know everything. And actually, I need to listen to my own body some of the time. I mean, like,
right.
But I think you're thrown into a situation where you're like, I need somebody who is a not only an expert, but understands what this is because this is something I don't even get. And that's where I can imagine you could get thrown into that where you're looking to them for all the answers and they're kind of like, don't know. I have to say though, that I have also watched this in my family where it's my sister has become stronger and stronger and stronger as the years go on. It's like, okay, I know my kid. I mean, it's very different than when Gracie was 2, right? It's very different. So there's just so much growth that happens. I can imagine, Sarah, your work sounds amazing. I mean, it sounds like you have the opportunity, being someone who lives that experience, but then to be able to help other people and know, like, you've been there. There's nothing more powerful as a coach to know that you not only have that lived experience, but that you can provide such perspective because you're maybe 3 years down the road or 4 years down the road. That's so powerful. So powerful.
I go to sleep happy every night, knowing that I'm helping someone in some way, even if all I'm doing is referring them to a spelling provider that day, or I'm hearing them when they talk about the thing they're struggling with, and I can give some type of support. It's just amazing. And, with the focus group that I have right now, the coolest part is that people are finding role models in each other with different things. So there are some people in the group whose kids are having difficulty with seizure disorders. And then there are other people in the group who've been there, done that. This is what helped us. Here, you want to try this, this will help you. And I almost feel like I just want to go sit in the corner with my tea and watch them interact because it's so amazing to watch people have hope. Just last night, one of the women in the group said, I was in a really low place before this started. And I feel like just being here, I have hope again.
That's amazing.
It's the best feeling. I hear of people in jobs that they hate. I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around that. I am so thankful and so honored to be able to help in the way that I help people thrive, and especially parents of non-speakers who've been beaten up every which way by life, to be able to show them the future is bright for your kid and for you. There's so much here now for people like us and for kids like our kids that just didn't exist before, or it wasn't talked about, or parents were not empowered to make more demands around what their kid needs. And it's just fabulous to see that this is now more of a mainstream conversation, and the future is bright because of it. I don't know if you've listened to the telepathy tapes. It was a podcast series. Have you listened to it?
I haven't yet, but I have it on my list.
Oh, you're going to love it. So it became the number one podcast in the country ahead of Joe Rogan, about families whose kids have autism and are non-speaking, like my rock.
Whoa. I
Right?
love that.
That alone
Yes.
is an enormous deal. And then get this, Joe Rogan talked about it on his podcast and had Kai Dickens, the director, on his podcast for an interview just yesterday. I'm furiously checking Spotify to see when the episode comes out because I can't wait to listen. But
yes,
to me, it's like a pinch me moment. It's like this population of people, parents like me, who have kids like my Rocco, who've been marginalized, ignored, told you were stupid, told your kid was stupid because they don't talk. Now we are up in mainstream conversation on the number 1 and 2 podcasts in the country, maybe the world. This is mainstream news now. Spelling that I had to get certified in just to help my own child is now being discussed on these podcasts as powerful means of communication.
Yeah, that's progress.
It's mind-boggling. People have asked, are you mind blown by the whole telepathy thing with, non-speakers who have autism? And I chuckle, that's duh. No, of course, I've always known this about my kid and other kids like him. I've always known that he was spiritually gifted and tuned in ways that the typical population is not. What's more mind-blowing to me is that this is being discussed, and parents are on this podcast talking about how school districts told them not to have hope, that their kid was not smart. People in power positions made them feel demoralized. And I remember during one of the episodes, I paused the episode and I cried for a few minutes, not because I was sad, not because I was mind blown. Again, the telepathy was a total dumb moment for me, but hearing other parents talk about the things they'd experienced that were not okay just was so validating because when you're in it alone a lot of the time. And to hear other people have the exact same experience, even though they live on the other side of the country in a completely different situation, everyone is having the same type of situations and getting through them. It just was such a powerful reminder of we're in this together. No, I'm not crazy for believing in my child. And let's keep doing this together because we're stronger together.
I love it. Sara, you are doing really, really, really important work. Before I let you go, you have to tell us a little bit about Rocco Up because this documentary, speaking of crying, I mean, all happy tears. These were happy tears, but it was so moving. It's a 22-minute documentary. It like comes and goes in a flash, but there's so much power to it. And it's such a real look at you and your family. So just tell us a little bit about what it
It's
is.
a documentary short. It has gone through over 13 film festivals, won many awards. It's about Rocco and our family on his journey to learn to surf. I laugh because we filmed this before he even started doing rapid prompt method and spelling with me. So now he has a voice that is all his own and can share in an open-ended fashion. And so I keep thinking like, oh, we're going to have to make part two of this because there's so much here. But we've worked with streaming agents. We've been in talks to get the right streaming platform going. We have not settled on anything yet. So if anyone listening has contacts in streaming, please reach out to me. We're toying with the best way to make it available so that the general public can have access to it. Because the general message is, not that you have to surf, although we love to surf and being in nature is so important for our family. But the general message is that when you believe in your child and you surround yourself with people who support that, anything is possible. Surfing was one of many things that experts told me Rocco did not have the core strength to do. He wouldn't be able to handle that, and now to see him at the beach thriving and surfing and being in nature and experiencing joy and having a community.
That's my favorite part. You live in a community that is beyond belief. And granted, a lot of communities would be like that. I can imagine. I'm not, but I just to see that and how the level of support and people watching them on the beach and all
Yeah.
that. Anyways, I don't want to give anything away because I think people should go out and watch this.
This community, we didn't always live here in Montauk, New York. We would summer here and vacation here. And during the pandemic, we ended up spending an extended amount of time, never with the intention of staying. And at some point, we realized, we're happier here. People would warn us and tell us you can't live there when you have a kid with autism because the schools are so outdated, or, there aren't any support services. It's hard to find a speech therapist. And they were correct. However, we pushed back because we felt like, you know what? This is the best community on earth if you are someone with autism. Why should we have to move? Instead, shouldn't the schools have to get with modern times and support kids like Rocco, who at the time was the only kid with his profile in town? And we said, we know, and he lives here. He deserves to be supported by people in his community. So we made that happen. And it was challenging and it took time and energy and resources, and it was totally worth doing because we get to live in a place we love. He has a community of people behind him. So when he's in high school, like he is right now, he gets to say hi to friends he knows from the beach, from surfing, and they treat him like one of the guys because he is. And they presume competence, and he is welcomed and supported. And I love that that comes through in the documentary because you can't do this alone. I mean, you can. I did for a long time, and I never struggled. When we lived in another town previously, people were always kind, they were always encouraging, but they didn't open their arms to include Rocco the way they do here in Montauk. And maybe that's just because everyone speaks the same language of surfing. Everyone always felt like they had something in common with him. It wasn't awkward to connect with him because you didn't know what to say. You just ask him how
Right.
it was. It was so easy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think having that community aspect for him, he's an extrovert, is very important. And he needs that. He thrives in that. If you give him a choice between staying home and going out, he always wants to go out.
That is beautiful to hear. I love that.
We're really thankful that the documentary shows that. And it's also an homage to Montauk and the beauty that is here and the people that are here. And we wouldn't have been able to do what we do for him without them. So everyone in streaming, if you're listening, reach out to me. We're working on it, but we can't wait for everyone to see it, because whether your thing is surfing or teaching your kid how to ride a bike or teaching your non-speaking kid how to spell or just going to the grocery store as a family feels like a mountain to climb. You don't have to subscribe to the labels or the limits that other people put on you. If you believe somewhere in your heart that it's possible for your family to do that, you go do it and decide that you're going to attract the people who will help you do it. Because that's the mantra I have. I will always attract the right people to help me, and I find them every time.
I was just going to say, and your life is proof of that, right? Of what's happened even up to this point. Sara, thank you so much for being on here and talking to us about this. This is such an important topic, and I feel like the more that we get more information out there to people, I'm going to have Sara's links on the show notes too for anybody that's interested. But just thank you for your time. You have been such a special guest.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
That's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.